On September 8, 2009, PhD student Annie Lee walked into the laboratory where she was conducting her research. But from that day on, no one was able to reach Annie, and an extensive investigation began. What hidden truths lay behind her disappearance, and what revelations did the investigation uncover? In today's video, we delve into the young woman's mysterious disappearance, the grim discovery of her remains, and the shocking findings. We also witness a mysterious 911 call and the events that follow.
She's on the ground. So there's... Who is it? Mama!
Brace yourselves. We're stepping into the crime scene now. We are heading to San Jose, California, a city with a population of 1 million. Annie Lee, who is 24 years old, was born and raised in San Jose, California. Growing up in a large, loving family, Annie was known for her conscientiousness, kindness, and friendliness toward everyone. She graduated from high school as the valedictorian and was considered by her peers as the most likely to become the next Einstein due to her impressive academic achievements. With a $160,000 scholarship, Annie completed her undergraduate studies at the University of Rochester, where she met Jonathan Wadowski. They quickly developed a deep relationship, leading to Jonathan proposing to her and setting their wedding date for September 13, 2009. After years of hard work, Annie was accepted to pursue a PhD in pharmacology at Yale University. While there, she actively engaged in extracurricular activities and wrote an article on campus security and crime for the faculty magazine. Meanwhile, her fiancé Jonathan continued his PhD at Columbia University, with their residences being 100 kilometers apart. On September 8, 2009, just 6 days before the scheduled wedding, Annie was as busy as ever. That morning, she left her apartment, took the Yale Transit to her office, and headed to a research location on Amistad Street. As the day went on, students left campus one by one, and Annie's roommates awaited her return. When 9 p.m. came and went without any word from her, her friends contacted the concerned New Haven Police Department. The police first spoke with her fiancé Jonathan, who shared that Annie always prioritized her safety, avoided being alone at night, and didn't stay out late working. If she had to work late, she would either wait for a ride or find someone to walk home with. Police found her wallet, keys, and phone in her office, but there were no signs of a struggle. After checking her bank transactions, it was confirmed that neither her credit nor debit cards had been used, and there was no activity on her phone since it was left in the office. Her Yale ID card was the only item missing from her bag, and it had been used to access the lab. Security footage captured Annie entering the building around 10 a.m., carrying something unidentified, presumed to be related to her research. The footage showed no indication of problems, no signs of her fleeing, and no sense of urgency, just an ordinary morning. Unfortunately, there was only one camera in the basement where her lab was located, making it challenging to trace her movements. At 12:50 p.m., a fire alarm sounded, prompting the evacuation of the building. Reviewing footage from 70 cameras in the area revealed that Annie did not exit the building during the evacuation. Authorities searched the building thoroughly, checking corridors, lockers, and outside trash bins, but found no leads. A $10,000 reward was offered for any information about Annie's location, and the public was asked for their assistance. Upon learning of her disappearance, Annie's fiancé and family rushed to the city to join in the search efforts, while law enforcement officers swarmed the campus to help. Authorities were uncertain whether they were facing an abduction or a more serious situation, with speculation spreading. As Annie's wedding day approached, rumors suggested she may have left voluntarily, but her family dismissed this theory. Annie had been eagerly planning her wedding for over a year, showing no signs of hesitation and sharing her excitement with friends. Like any bride, she wanted everything to be just right, meticulously planning even the smallest details like flower arrangements. Her sudden disappearance just days before the wedding had no logical explanation. With increased police involvement, a second search uncovered blood drops in rooms G13 and G22. Further investigation revealed that some beads found belonged to Annie's necklace. When the ceiling tiles were removed from lab G33 where Annie worked, a bloody sock and a blue surgical glove were discovered. Additional blood traces were found in the adjacent lab, along with a noticeable odor, also present in the changing rooms. Cadaver dogs were brought in to assist in locating the source, and the entire building was declared a crime scene, indicating that something had gone terribly wrong. On the evening of September 13, 2009, the dreaded outcome became a reality. Annie's body was discovered squeezed inside a wall in the basement. The state medical examiner revealed that the cause of death was traumatic asphyxiation. It was noted that her jaw and collarbone were broken, and signs of sexual assault were evident. DNA samples collected from her clothes and the crime scene provided crucial leads in the investigation. The tragic murder of Annie had a profound impact on the university community, leading to a memorial service held in her honor. Authorities reassured the public that the investigation was systematic, believing the perpetrator to be someone from the university. They expressed confidence that no students were involved and that no one else was in danger. The police stated that access to the area where the body was found required internal access and would be exceedingly challenging for an outsider. Despite these assurances, students were unsettled, resulting in heightened insecurity on campus, with some choosing to move in large groups. Subsequently, DNA analysis identified a match with a known criminal named Kieran Robinson. However, this revelation did not provide the answers the authorities were seeking. Meanwhile, as the search for Annie continued, it was discovered that Kieran had died in a separate incident, prompting further scrutiny into his background. It was revealed that Kieran had worked on some construction in the building prior to his death, accounting for his DNA presence. Upon re-examination of security footage, detectives painstakingly reviewed 700 hours of recordings and interviewed over 150 individuals. During this process, the focus shifted to a lab technician named Raymond Clark, who had been under surveillance for days. Raymond's movements on the day of Annie's disappearance, including entering and exiting rooms G13 and G22 multiple times, were corroborated by keycard and camera evidence. His peculiar behavior, like leaving the building during a fire alarm and changing lab coats, raised suspicions. When questioned by police, Raymond had scratches on his face and arms, attributing them to a cat. Following a polygraph test, which yielded inconclusive results, he was asked to provide a DNA sample. While awaiting the DNA test results, Raymond remained free. The DNA found on a bloody sock in the lab wall and Raymond's lab coat matched, leading to implications. After examining keycard data and video recordings, the theory emerged that Raymond was the culprit and had committed the crime just before the fire alarm. He allegedly disposed of Annie's body behind the wall after changing his blood-stained lab coat. Raymond returned to the scene, moved the body through G22, and concealed it. Prior to her demise, Annie had sent out a group email announcing her upcoming marriage, including Raymond in the recipients. In delving into Raymond's motive, authorities uncovered his engagement and a speculated clandestine infatuation with Annie, triggering a jealous reaction upon learning of her impending nuptials. The live-streamed funeral of Annie featured tearful speeches from her family. Shortly after the funeral, Raymond altered his statement, admitting guilt in exchange for a 44-year prison term. Raymond Clark is scheduled for release in 2053 at the age of 70. Before we dive into our next story, if you could take a moment to hit that like button, it would mean the world to us. A single click for you is a huge boost of encouragement for us. Sydney Powell was born in 1997 to Steve and Brenda Powell. Her mother, Brenda, dedicated 28 years to Akron Children's Hospital, making significant contributions to the Childhood Cancers and Blood Disorders Center. Sydney started her educational journey at St. Sebastian Primary School and graduated from St. Vincent Mary High School in 2018. During her successful high school years, Sydney excelled in extracurricular activities, playing soccer and showcasing her talents in sports like lacrosse. Post-graduation, the Powell family embarked on the college selection process, visiting numerous universities in Ohio and surrounding states to find the best fit for Sydney. After thorough research, Sydney decided to apply to Mount Union University, renowned for its intimate atmosphere, just a 45-minute drive from Akron. Thanks to her academic prowess, Sydney earned a scholarship, enjoying the freedom it offered while remaining close to her family. In the fall of 2018, Sydney commenced her college education at Mount Union, where her high school best friend also enrolled. They chose to live in the campus dormitories. Although just a short drive from her parents' home, Sydney relished her time at the university, seldom returning home except for holiday breaks. Mount Union University provided a student portal, allowing parents to access grades and pay tuition until the student turned 18. Once reaching legal adulthood at 18, privacy laws prohibited sharing grades. Sydney, a distinguished high school student known for her academic rigor, never raised any concerns for her family. In early 2020, Steve encountered technical difficulties with the portal while attempting to pay tuition. Despite multiple tries, the portal kept logging him out. Sydney assured her dad it was a technical issue she would resolve with the school, but with no solution in sight, Steve grew anxious and contacted the university directly. On March 3, 2020, during a phone call regarding the tuition payment, Steve received a startling revelation. A university official disclosed that Sydney was no longer registered as a student, having been unenrolled months earlier. Perplexed, Steve questioned if it was a mistake, as he believed Sydney was diligently attending classes. When he inquired about the cancellation date, privacy laws restricted the disclosure of such information. Further investigation by Steve revealed that Sydney had failed 3 out of 4 courses, resulting in her academic suspension. Academic suspension entails the removal of a student's registration for a specific period, with the opportunity for re-enrollment once the penalty concludes. Students are formally notified via a letter that requires their signature. Interestingly, Sydney did not sign the letter, despite evidence of its delivery. Despite her suspension, Sydney continued attending classes, sorority meetings, and residing on campus. University officials repeatedly advised Sydney to vacate the dorms and questioned her class attendance. Initially trying to assist Sydney, they inquired if she had discussed the situation with her family, to which Sydney falsely claimed her parents were informed. She avoided the inevitable move-out and consequences of her suspension. After a final warning on February 24th, she eventually left the campus and dormitories. Until March 3rd, 2020, he had spent all his savings on hotel stays, but his lie was uncovered. During a work call, Steve ironically noticed a notification from the Life 360 app. Learning from the app that Sydney was at the family home, he decided to use this information to his advantage and confront her about the suspension face-to-face. Knowing Sydney also had access to the app, he chose to hide his visit by leaving his phone at the office and heading home. Upon arrival, he discussed the situation with Sydney, showing no anger but understanding instead. Sydney confessed she was unsure about her path in school, seeing her friends succeed and work hard on their careers. Being a responsible father, Steve reassured her they would overcome this together and supported her, believing the situation would improve. He also thought his wife Brenda, with her professional experience, could provide more help to their daughter. Considering the close relationship between mother and daughter, he called Brenda to come home and discuss the issue with Sydney. As Brenda returned home, Steve headed back to work and messaged her but received no reply. Minutes after the message went unanswered, a detective friend of Steve's called, informing him that the police had been dispatched to their house and asking if everything was okay. Brenda entered the house to discuss the suspension with university officials. During the call, the official on the phone heard loud screams and sounds suggesting an assault. The official called out to Brenda but received no response, insisting she confirm her well-being or they would contact the police. Shortly after, a woman's voice came through on the other end, claiming, "Hello, I'm Brenda." However, the school officials realized the voice on the phone was not Brenda's, suspecting her voice was being mimicked. The official communicated with the police department, narrated the events, requesting a welfare check for the Powell family.
The phone, and there was a lot of screaming going on, so he couldn't really say if it was like a physical fight, but just heard like a lot of yelling and screaming going on. And then he tried calling back twice, and there was no callback.
Hearing the police were en route, Steve tried contacting Brenda and Sydney multiple times, finally receiving a call back from Sydney. In hysteria, Sydney told her father that someone had forcefully entered the home, urging him to call the police immediately. The responding officers found a broken window at the back of the house with glass and blood, then entered. Inside, they encountered Sydney with hands covered in blood, crying.
She's on the ground. So there's...
Who is it?
My mom! Someone broke in the back window.
All right, hold on.
She's on the ground.
And claiming someone had forcefully entered while she was chatting with her mother. During a normal conversation, an intruder threatened Sydney and Brenda, with Brenda telling Sydney to leave the house immediately and call for help.
Dad!
What happened? What's going on? What's going on?
We heard a bang. We heard a bang. And she told me to get out. And then I heard...
Sydney complied, but returned shortly, finding her mother stabbed on the floor. Brenda was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries later that day, with the cause of death being the impact to her back and 23 stab wounds. The first responding officers noticed the house in disarray, with broken windows, bloodstains, and overturned furniture. Doubts surrounded Sydney's intruder story from the start, as she neither ran to a neighbor's house nor called 911. Details from the conversation with the university official emerged later that evening, confirming these suspicions. Theories suggested Sydney committed the horrific murder, then impersonated her identity on the phone, mimicking her mother's voice. Although messages between Sydney and Brenda appeared to reflect a normal mother-daughter relationship, it was discovered Sydney had lied before. On February 25th, Brenda messaged Sydney expressing feelings of betrayal and the need for good grades. Sydney responded, dismissing her concerns and claiming her grades were fine. About a month after the murder, Sydney was arrested for murder, aggravated assault, and tampering with evidence. She was released on $25,000 bail on April 17, 2020, and began living with her grandparents. At her first court appearance, Sydney pleaded not guilty due to mental illness, complicating the case. After the hearing, her father Steve stated, "I don't know why we're doing this. Nobody wants her to go to jail. I don't know how to cope with this. I'm just trying to keep my family together." Sydney's trial, which started on September 7, 2023, saw the prosecution argue that she committed premeditated murder for revenge, emphasizing her actions were deliberate and not a result of psychosis. They highlighted her concocted break-in story and breaking a window to solidify her narrative. Defense lawyers didn't deny Sydney killed her mother Brenda, but argued it occurred during a psychotic break. A psychologist testified that she lost control over reality in the 3 months leading to the murder. creating a false sense of reality for herself. Sydney Powell was found guilty of killing her mother and was sentenced to life imprisonment. She will be eligible for parole after serving 15 years of her sentence. Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.